Hey guys, we are picking up today with the exciting conclusion to how much land does a man need? Keep in mind that we left Packham when he was awaiting the Bashkir's chief because the Bashkirs did not want to make any financial decisions until they had consulted with him. Also, keep in mind that for Packham to answer this question, how much land does a man need? His original need was not too great. He farmed with a commune. His first amount of property that he bought by himself was 40 acres, and now he is standing on the cusp of potentially owning over 13,000 acres himself. So let's pick up with part 6. While the Bashkirs were disputing, a man in a large fox fur cap appeared on the scene. They all became silent and rose to their feet. The interpreter said, "This is our chief himself." Packham immediately fetched the best dressing gown and 5 pounds of tea and offered these to the chief. The chief accepted them and seated himself in the place of honor. The Bashkirs at once began telling him something. The chief listened for a while, then made a sign with his head for them to be silent, and addressing himself to Packham, said in Russian, "Well, let it be so. Choose whatever piece of land you like. We have plenty of it." "How can I take as much as I like?" thought Packham. "I must get a deed to make it secure, or else they may say it is yours and afterwards may take it away again." "Thank you for your kind words," he said aloud. "You have much land, and I only want a little. But I should like to be sure which bit is mine. Could it not be measured over and made to me? Life and death are in God's hands. You good people give it to me, but your children might wish to take it away again." "You are quite right," said the chief. "We will make it over to you." "I heard that a dealer had been here," continued Packham, "and that you gave him a little land too, and signed title deeds to that effect. I should like to have it done in the same way." The chief understood. "Yes," replied he, "that can be done quite easily. We have a scribe, and we will go to town with you and have the deed properly sealed." "And what will be the price?" asked Packham. "Our price is always the same, 1,000 rubles a day." A day. Now, if you had been looking for some giant red warning sign, maybe finally this will strike a chord with Packham. The good news, the only good news about Packham communicating with the chief is that the chief is able to speak in Russian. Because he's able to speak in Russian, he can talk directly to him. So, a day? All he has is 1,000 rubles. A day? What measure is that? How many acres would that be? "We do not know how to reckon it out," said the chief. "We sell it by the day. As much as you can go round on your feet in a day is yours, and the price is 1,000 rubles a day." Now, this just got better. We've talked the entire story about the fact that Packham is not lazy at all. He's actually very strong. He did 300 miles in 7 days. That's a lot of property. Packham was surprised. "But in a day you can get round a large tract of land," he said. The chief laughed, always laughing. "It will all be yours," said he, "but there is one condition. If you don't return on the same day to the spot whence you started, your money is lost." "But how am I to mark the way I have gone?" "Why, we shall go to any spot you like and stay there. You must start from that spot and make your round, taking a spade, that's a long, flat-edged shovel, taking a spade with you. Wherever you think necessary, make a mark. At every turning, dig a hole and pile up the turf. Then afterwards we will go round with a plough from hole to hole. You may make as large a circuit as you please, but before the sun sets you must return to the place you started from. All the land you cover will be yours." Packham was delighted. It was decided to start early next morning. They talked a while, and after drinking some more kumiss and eating some more mutton, they had tea again, and then the night came on. They gave Packham a feather bed to sleep on, and the Bashkirs dispersed for the night, promising to assemble the next morning at daybreak and ride out before sunrise to the appointed spot. Now, because I'm a nervous kind of person and a careful kind of person, this situation with a great deal of money would bother me. Lots of things would bother me. So, one, you're telling me if I place this money down, go walk around an entire day and come back and don't make it there before the sun sets, I lose my cash? That would make me nervous. Two, what's to say I can trust you? Who's to say that he's not going to lay his money down and they're not going to pick it up and walk away with it? 3. A lot of mess can happen when you're wandering around, keeping in mind who is in control of Packham's mind. The devil. There are lots of things that he could potentially do to Packham physically, mentally, emotionally to prevent him from getting back here and getting this grand prize. Lots. What does Packham see? Christmas morning. He sees land. Part 7. Packham lay on the feather bed but could not sleep. He kept thinking about the land. What a large track I will mark off, thought he. I can easily do 35 miles in a day. The days are long now, and within a circuit of 35 miles, what a lot of land there will be. I will sell the poor land or let it to peasants, but I'll pick out the best and farm it. I will buy 2 ox teams and hire 2 more laborers. About 150 acres shall be plow land, and I will pasture cattle on the rest. Packham lay awake all night and dozed off only just before dawn. Hardly were his eyes closed when he had a dream. He thought he was lying in that same tent and heard somebody chuckling outside. He wondered who it could be and rose and went out, and he saw the Bashkir chief sitting in front of the tent holding his sides and rolling about with laughter. Going nearer to the chief, Packham asked, "What are you laughing at?" But he saw that it was no longer the chief, but the dealer who had recently stopped at his house and had told him about the land. Just as Packham was going to ask, "Have you been here long?" he saw that it was not the dealer, but the peasant who had come up from the Volga long ago to Packham's old home. Then he saw that it was not the peasant either, but the devil himself with hooves and horns, sitting there and chuckling, and before him lay a man barefoot, prostrate on the ground with only trousers and a shirt on. And Packham dreamt that he looked more attentively to see what sort of man it was lying there, and he saw that the man was dead, and that it was himself. He awoke, horror-struck. What things one does dream, thought he. Looking round, he saw through the open door that dawn was breaking. It's time to wake them up, thought he. We ought to be starting. He got up, roused his man, who was sleeping in his cart, bade him harness, and went to call the Bashkirs. It's time to go to the steppe to measure the land, he said. The Bashkirs rose and assembled, and the chief came too. Then they began drinking kumiss again, and offered Packham some tea, but he would not wait. If we are to go, let us go. It is high time, said he. Do you ever pay attention to your dreams? Do you ever think that your dreams mean something? In this particular instance, Packham had a pretty impressive dream in which every person, random stranger, that has told him anything about land, who has led him to this moment, turned out to be the devil. And Packham goes, what things one does dream! And he completely blows it off. Part 8. The Bashkirs got ready and they all started, some mounted on horses and some in carts. Packham drove in his own small cart with his servant and took a spade with him. When they reached the steppe, the morning red was beginning to kindle. They ascended a hillock, called by the Bashkirs a shikan, and dismounting from their carts and their horses gathered in one spot. The chief came up to Packham and stretching out his arms toward the plain, said, "See," said he, "all this, as far as your eye can reach, is ours. You may have any part of it you like." What temptation. You can continue marking the sins. Packham's eyes glistened. It was all virgin soil, as flat as the palm of your hand, as black as the seed of a poppy, and in the hollows different kinds of grasses grew breast high. The chief took his fox fur cap, placed it on the ground, and said, "This will be the mark. Start from here and return here again. All the land you go round shall be yours." Packham took out his money and put on the cap. Then he took off his outer coat, remaining in his sleeveless undercoat. He unfastened his girdle and tied it tight below his stomach, put a little bag of bread into the breast of his coat, and tying a flask of water to his girdle, he drew up the tops of his boots, took the spade from his man, and stood ready to start. He considered for some moments which way he had better go. It was tempting everywhere. Of course it is. The devil's in his eyes. No matter, he concluded. I will go towards the rising sun. He turned his face to the east, stretched himself, and waited for the sun to appear above the rim. I must lose no time, he thought, and it is easier walking while it is still cool. The sun's rays had hardly flashed above the horizon before Packham, carrying the spade over his shoulder, went down into the steppe. Packham started walking neither slowly nor quickly. After having gone 1,000 yards, he stopped, dug a hole, and placed pieces of turf one on another to make it more visible. Then he went on, and now that he had walked off his stiffness, he quickened his pace. After a while, he dug another hole. Packham looked on. The hillock could be distinctly seen in the sunlight, with the people on it, and the glittering tires of the cartwheels. At a rough guess, Packham concluded that he had walked 3 miles. It was growing warmer. He took off his undercoat, flung it across his shoulder, and went on again. It had grown quite warm now. He looked at the sun. It was time to think of breakfast. The first shift is done, but there are 4 in a day, and it is too soon yet to turn. But I will just take off my boots, said he to himself. He sat down, took off his boots, stuck them in his girdle, and went on. It was easy walking now. I will go on for another 3 miles, thought he, and then turn to the left. The spot is so fine that it would be a pity to lose it. The further one goes, the better the land seems. Not a coincidence. He went straight on for a while, and when he looked around, the hillock was scarcely visible, and the people on it looked like black ants, and he could just see something glistening there in the sun. Ah, thought Packham, I have gone far enough in this direction. It is time to turn. Besides, I am in a regular sweat and very thirsty. He stopped, dug a large hole, and heaped up pieces of turf. Next, he untied his flask, had a drink, and then turned sharply to the left. He went on and on. The grass was high, and it was very hot. Packham began to grow tired. He looked at the sun and saw that it was noon. Well, he thought, I must have a rest. He sat down and ate some bread and drank some water, but he did not lie down, thinking that if he did, he might fall asleep. After sitting a little while, he went on again. At first he walked easily. The food had strengthened him, but it had become terribly hot, and he felt sleepy. Still he went on thinking, an hour to suffer, a lifetime to live. He went a long way in this direction also, and was about to turn to the left again when he perceived a damp hollow. It would be a pity to leave that out, he thought. Flax would do well there. So he went on past the hollow and dug a hole in the other side of it before he turned the corner. Packham looked towards the hillock. The heat made the air hazy. It seemed to be quivering, and through the haze the people on the hillock could scarcely be seen. Ah, thought Packham, I have made the sides too long. I must make this one shorter. And he went along the third side, stepping faster. He looked at the sun. It was nearly halfway to the horizon, and he had not yet done 2 miles of the third side of the square. He was still 10 miles from the goal. No, he thought, though it will make my land lopsided, I must hurry back in a straight line now. I might go too far, and as it is, I have a great deal of land. So Packham hurriedly dug a hole and turned straight toward the hillock. If I ask you in a question later to draw this shape, know that it was supposed to be a box. It was supposed to be a square. That's what he wanted. That is not what he got. And it was all because it was just too tempting to stop. Part 9. Packham went straight towards the hillock, but he now walked with difficulty. He was done up with the heat, his bare feet were cut and bruised, and his legs began to fail. He longed to rest, but it was impossible if he meant to get back before sunset. The sun waits for no man, and it was sinking lower and lower. Oh dear, he thought, if only I have not blundered trying for too much. What if I am too late? He looked towards the hillock and at the sun. He was still far from his goal, and the sun was already near the rim. Packham walked on and on. It was very hard walking, but he went quicker and quicker. He pressed on, but was still far from the place. He began running, threw away his coat, his boots, his flask, and his cap, and kept only the spade, which he used as a support. What shall I do? He thought again. I have grasped too much and ruined the whole affair. I can't get there before the sun sets. And this fear made him still more breathless. Packham went on running. His soaking shirt and trousers stuck to him, and his mouth was parched. His breast was working like a blacksmith's bellows. His heart was beating like a hammer, and his legs were giving way as if they did not belong to him. Packham was seized with terror lest he should die of the strain. Though afraid of death, he could not stop. After having run all that way, they will call me a fool if I stop now, thought he. And he ran on and drew near and heard the Bashkirs yelling and shouting to him, and their cries inflamed his heart still more. He gathered his last strength and ran on. The sun was close to the rim, and cloaked in mist looked large and red as blood. Now, yes, now it was beginning, it was about to set. The sun was quite low, but he was also quite near his aim. Packham could already see the people on the hillock waving their arms to hurry him up. He could see the fox fur cap on the ground and the money on it, and the chief sitting on the ground holding his sides. And Packham remembered his dream. There is plenty of land, thought he, but will God let me live on it? I have lost my life, I've lost my life, I shall never reach that spot. Packham looked at the sun, which had reached the earth. One side of it had already disappeared. With all his remaining strength, he rushed on, bending his body forward so that his legs could hardly follow fast enough to keep him from falling. Just as he reached the hillock, it suddenly grew dark. He looked up. The sun had already set. He gave a cry. All my labor has been in vain, thought he, and was about to stop, but he heard the Bashkirs still shouting, and remembered that though to him from below the sun seemed to have set, they on the hillock could still see it. He took a long breath and ran up the hillock. It was still light there. He reached the top and saw the cap. Before it sat the chief, laughing and holding his sides. Again, Packer remembered his dream, and he uttered a cry. His legs gave way beneath him. He fell forward and reached the cap with his hands. "Ah, that's a fine fellow!" exclaimed the chief. "He has gained much land." Packham's servant came running up and tried to raise him, but he saw that blood was flogging from his mouth. Packham was dead. The Bashkirs clicked their tongues to show their pity. His servant picked up a spade and dug a grave long enough for Packham to lie in, and buried him in it. 6 feet from his head to his heels was all he needed. Lots of things. Irony being the biggest deal here, because when we said how much land does a man need, what a man needs and what a man wants are two very, very different things. And I'm pretty sure that Leo Tolstoy, your author, is communicating that pretty effectively. The part of the story that both amuses me and frustrates me is another piece of irony. And the irony would be this: Packham went to the Bashkirs for land. Packham went to the Bashkirs because he was told that they are as simple as sheep, and sheep are not known for being very intelligent animals, and that you could get land for very little money. So he goes. He asks the question. He is continually being laughed at. The Bashkirs are nomadic. They're nomadic. Do you know what a nomad is? A nomad is a person who goes from place to place to place, never settling down in one place for too long. A nomad never actually owns the land. So can you figure out why they were laughing? The joke would certainly be on Packham. So even if Packham had survived this day's journey, he would never have owned that land. All right, so this was How Much Land Does a Man Need by Leo Tolstoy. Activities will follow.